Well, hey there, guys. I'm Axel the Beast, and this is the Curiosity Shot, Zelda Dungeon video mailbag where I answer your Zelda questions. Uh-oh, guys, this time it's the 13th mailbag, unlucky numbers and all that. I guess something bad might happen. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, what if I complain about Twilight Princess again? Matthew Fryer asks, do you think the Twilight Princess bosses were big to cover up how easy they are? To some degree, yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm not sure if it was intentional, but, it definitely wasn't. I think they were trying to go for, like, an epic feel. I mean, I don't think the game ended up that much more epic than, say, Ocarina of Time. In fact, in some ways, Ocarina of Time may have been more epic. But I think they were going for a more epic feel, and I think that's why the bosses were so titanic and, you know, awesome. But, yeah, they were really easy, and I think, inadvertently or not, they came to that effect that you described. Compared to Wind Waker, I thought the bosses were so much easier, which is hilarious because the enemies were harder than in Wind Waker. And in effect, the enemies in Twilight Princess were harder than its own bosses, which is embarrassing. Bosses are supposed to be really hard, and I don't think that they were hard in Twilight Princess at all. So I was a little disappointed with that. I'm sure you're familiar with this. Steele asks, what are your thoughts about the original Legend of Zelda? You rarely mention it even though it was the one that started it all. I got this game when it first came out when I was seven, and although there have been awesome Zelda games that have come out since then, it has remained my favorite. In my opinion, it is the purest Zelda game. How do you feel about this? I agree, definitely. I'm sorry if I haven't mentioned it much, I guess it's just never come up. Yeah, Zelda, the original Legend of Zelda, it's the root of the series. It has a lot of things the later games haven't followed up on as much, and in my opinion, that's a mistake. I mean, the exploration, that was always what Zelda was, and that's what made the game, revolutionary. It was what made it such a huge game. And, although I've never beat it, I only got, like, 2 dungeons in, I think, I could see it was a great game, and I've learned a lot about it since then, and I can't wait for an opportunity to pick it up again. In a lot of ways, I think A Link to the Past was, like, a continuation of what the original Legend of Zelda was, so I think, in a way, they followed it up kind of properly. But I don't know, maybe that's just me. Kishi asks, what would you say is the scariest Zelda enemy? The Dead Hand, definitely. From Ocarina of Time. He's just such a disturbing, freaky, shocking creature. He was really scary, and very gruesome, too. The way he appeared, he had blood on his body. The way he came out of nowhere and, I don't know, that was a horrible impersonation, but it was a very disturbing creature, and it actually shocked me. Almost something that's too much to have in a game like that, almost. Not quite, but pretty close. It scared the hell out of me. Bryce Squires asks, what Zelda game do you think has the best musical content? I'd say the Wind Waker and Majora's Mask. The Wind Waker's music was so beautiful and, unique. It had that really classic feel to it with the violins and stuff. I just thought it was a great feel to it, and I think it has some of the prettiest, most beautiful songs in the entire game. Majora's Mask, on the other hand, it was mysterious. It had a very mysterious air to it. Some of that was beautiful, some of it was scary, but it was amazing nonetheless, and I think both these games have the best songs in the series. That's just me. Maybe not classics like the original Overworld theme, but I think overall better, and some of my favorite songs in the series come from both those games. Triforce asks, a couple of weeks ago you stated Stone Tower was your favorite dungeon. So what was your hardest dungeon, and what do you think made it hard? Stone Tower Temple, actually. Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons it was my favorite dungeon. I think it was hard because, it had such a unique idea with the flipping. It's something you can't think with. And there was insane design to the dungeon. There's lava on the ceiling, lava below. There's all kinds of weird rooms like that. It just made you think in a very weird way, and it just had such odd design. Also, the enemies were actually kind of hard. They had some tough moments with the enemies, and there was a lot of enemies. And the how many mini-bosses were there? Wizrobe, Garrowmaster, Gomez. I think that was it, but I wouldn't be too sure. There was a lot of mini-bosses. And, it was also kind of the climax of the game. They made you use everything that you got up until that point. It just took everything you'd learned and made you use it. It was great. Really hard. Do you feel that the Kokiri will return in a future game? Are those really related? Tingle, definitely. I think he's this odd little character they intend to come back. I mean, they intend to use repeatedly, and he's appeared in a lot of games for no reason, may I add. Plus, he's gotten those his own series of games now, and I think it's inevitable we'll see him again. For those who hate him, too bad. For those who love him like me, as for the Kokiri, maybe not. I mean, they're a part of the series now, but they only really appeared in one game, except Wind Waker, in which one appeared. And, unless you count the Koroks, but I don't. They're just an evolution of the Kokiri. They're not the Kokiri. I say maybe not because they weren't even used as much as the Gorons and Zoras, and I have a feeling they might start phasing those old established species out to have some more, unique characters and ideas. Maybe I'm wrong. Do you ever feel Ocarina of Time is overappreciated simply because it's first? Like, do you think Majora's Mask would be loved as Ocarina of Time today if it had been made first instead? Kinda. Ocarina of Time was famous because it was revolutionary, in my opinion. I've stated this before. It's a bit odd to answer, though, because this, it's kind of a succession thing. Majora's Mask was what it was because of Ocarina of Time. Bit odd to answer. But yeah, I think overall you're right. If Majora's Mask had come out first, it would have been recognized as the revolutionary game. Not to say Ocarina of Time was bad or anything, I just think that's the key reason it's so, famous, The Legend of Zelda asks, what sort of dungeons would you like to see in Zelda Wii, and how many would you like? I'd like some very diverse dungeons. I mentioned this in my Zelda Wii video. I'd like to have new ideas. As for the, lots of unique dungeons with new ideas, all kinds of cool stuff to see. I want them to be very different from each other, and preferably different from stuff we've seen. As for the number, I'm not sure, but to be honest, I wouldn't mind less. It's kind of like substance versus quantity. I'd love to have some really awesome dungeons, even if there's less of them. A lot would be great, but I wouldn't mind if there were less, to be honest. Pee-wee Lins asks, is the new Zelda game going to be rated T for teen? Can't be sure. Very possibly, because, a lot of people say it's going to be like a successor to Twilight Princess. My complaints there. I'll save them. One complaining question is enough for this video. But, I just think if it follows up Twilight Princess, there's a chance it's going to have that trait in common. Nothing to prove yet, because I think it might not be like Twilight Princess. We will see. John Turlington asks, is it true that Zelda Wii will be the last Zelda game? Not proven, and that's very, very unlikely. There's money to be had, I mean, I don't think Nintendo's going to discontinue a series they can still make money off. Additionally, it's kind of like the Final Fantasy thing story-wise. They kind of make new games that stand on their own, even so there's no issue of it, coming to an end in the storyline. To that reason, I think that it's, there's not going to be any time soon that the series is going to end. Lincoln Mark asks, the first two trailers of Twilight Princess showed a lot of material that wasn't used in the final game, such as the Dark Graveyard, Weird Giant Figure, Giant Spider running sequence, and famous Beta Forest. I find it strange Nintendo showed so much elements in these trailers that weren't used in Twilight Princess, especially because I thought they looked really awesome. Do you think these missing elements will be used in Zelda Wii? Possibly. There have been theories about Zelda 64, the old beta, Ocarina of Time, kind of a different game, in that there's been ideas from it that have been used in subsequent games, and that Zelda Wii will use some of these. So maybe it's like that. I think especially it would be likely if the game is going to be like Twilight Princess, although I kind of doubt it will be. We have to see. Oh, for the record, I agree with you. Those were very cool, those moments in the trailers. Dr. Seaweed asks, why does everybody want the Zelda series to change to a different formula, even though the formula they were using worked for over 25 years? Maybe because it's gotten stale. I don't 100% agree with them, but I do agree that it needs new ideas eventually. It needs to be fresh. I think there can be a compromise, though, in which they can make new innovations, yet still keep in the spirit and the tradition and the gameplay basics of the old games. I think there's a way we can work between the two. Last question. Richard Clerks asks, in your very first video you talked about transportation. You prefer, among many others, including me, walking. That's okay, but is Link going to walk any faster than normal? I get annoyed pretty quickly about the slow moving. That's why I talk about the depth in the overworld. I think if you have a lot to do on the overworld, you know, speed versus things to do, you're not going to worry about how long it takes to get here and there, because there's so much stuff to do getting there. It'll be an enthralling experience in itself. And for when you've gone through an area and you've done everything there is to do, you've got the warping. I think it's a pretty ideal setup. It wasn't boring in the old games, especially when you had like the Pegasus boots to travel fast and the warping to travel fast. Alright, that's it for this time, guys. Hey, it looks like we got through it all. No troubles with scary numbers.